Tensions remain high in the West Philippine Sea as Chinese aggression continues, but the Philippine government is unfazed and stays the course. After all, sovereignty is at stake in the West Philippine Sea front that is all but quiet. Good evening, I'm Pia Hontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix politics as usual. Our guests for tonight via Zoom, the AFP Armed Forces Western Command or Westcom Commander Vice Admiral Alberto Carlos and political analyst Froilan Calilung. Good evening, Vice Admiral Carlos and Professor Calilung. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us tonight. Well, let's begin with Professor Calilung. I wanted to ask, because as some analysts have warned that there will be consequences if we declare the Chinese ambassador persona non grata or if we have him recalled to Beijing. So if that is the case, then what would our other options be, given that this is already, this is a diplomatic way of dealing with things? What else can we do?
Well, actually, Pia, that is, I think, the most probable thing that we could do right now is to actually come up with a more stronger form of protest. Because, as you know, many of our diplomatic protests actually fell on deaf ears. We have filed hundreds of them, and I think none of them actually materialized at this point. So I believe that that could be a very good move that we could do right now, presumably on the ground that it will not really be something that we will have for a very long time. I mean, it could only be on a temporary basis. But if this thing will not push through, meaning to say that our own government will not accede to that kind of protest, I think there are some other possibilities that we could actually utilize. I think what the PCG is doing right now and what the Philippine government is doing right now, which is, of course, amplifying the real scenario in the West Philippine Sea, is actually a very good point, wherein we are trying to bring it to the mainstream media, to social media, all the things that are happening in the West Philippine Sea. And, of course, it also resonates well with the public that we're gaining a foothold on the idea that more and more people are becoming involved in this issue of the West Philippine Sea. At this point in time, I think other measures that can be utilized or that could actually be explored will be a trade embargo. But I think it will result in some serious economic repercussions, especially on the part of the Philippines. So I think that is an idea that I think is quite far fetched at the moment.
Very many points that you've brought up, Professor. Although, let's begin with trade embargo. That's going to hurt us more than it will hurt China, right?
Definitely. Considering the fact that we actually have a lot of existing bilateral relations with China that are, of course, within the economic forefront, and of course, we need to understand that apart from U.S. and ASEAN, China remains to be one of our major trading allies. So, if ever we will be taking that course, I think it will do us more harm than good, considering the fact that we only export very few commodities to China, but then again, we actually import a lot of goods and even services from the mainland. So it will really create a terrible, I think, a great deal of an impact and create a much of a dent on our economy if ever we will take that course.
Right. So much that is made in China here in the Philippines. Professor, itong diplomatic protests, well, apparently, like you said also, no, hindi naman siya talaga, they don't really work because, and we know they don't really work because incidents keep happening again and again. Wala lang, parang ginaganyan lang ng China yung mga diplomatic protests, no? And then this whole discussion about should we have their ambassador recalled? Should we recall our ambassador there in Beijing back here to the Philippines? Should we file even more diplomatic protests? In other words, it doesn't really matter. Ganun po ba? We're going to be diplomatic about this and use diplomatic measures, but we know they don't work.
Yes, I think, Pia, no, we still need to remain on that course. Of course, at the end of the day, it always will be the idea of diplomacy, no, that we should rely on, and that we need to keep steadfast with, primarily because we need to be attuned with rules-based engagements, and we cannot also let go of the momentum that we're currently enjoying right now. What I mean by that is, because of this heightened tension, a lot of countries, especially those that are traditional allies of the Philippines, like the United States, but also Australia, India, Japan, and other members of the Quad, are actually behind us here. And I think this is a very good starting point for us.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think, what's happening in the West Philippine Sea right now, I think will be more of a common thing, especially going into the future. And I think this is the most opportune time that we could make a stronger statement, come up with a stronger message, while the international community is still looking at it as a thing of a great
Okay.
magnitude. Because if this trend will continue, I think, Pia, there will come a point in time that it will just be a norm. It will just
Run
be
of the
common
mill na
thing,
lang.
and
Oo.
we might be losing that foothold. We might be losing that grip, so to speak, on the current positioning that we have right now, especially in the world affairs, in the global dynamics of geopolitics. So I think,
So,
if we are going to come up with a protest, if we're going to come up with a recall, I think this is the opportune time for us to do that.
but of course, diplomatic protests and, parang training the world's attention on the West Philippine Sea with everything that is happening there. Kumbaga, it's not enough, right? Because, and I'm going to ask this of Vice Admiral Carlos when we come back. You know, our ships, our vessels are outnumbered by the Chinese maritime militia, the Chinese Coast Guard, even the PLA Navy. We do need to modernize, right, Vice Admiral Carlos? We do need more ships and vessels. But we're going to get the answers to that from you, Vice Admiral Carlos. When we come back, Politics as usual. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is Politics as usual. Still with us, the Westcom Commander, Western Command Commander, Vice Admiral Alberto Carlos, joining us via Zoom, and also political analyst Froilan Calilong. Vice Admiral Carlos, I had a hanging question for you before we went to a break. We do need to modernize, right? Although, of course, ang involved talaga ay mga Coast Guard and BFAR vessels. However, we still need to talk about our Navy, our Philippine Navy. We still need to modernize. We
Yes.
still need more ships, more vessels,
Well,
right?
thank you very much, Pia, for inviting me. In terms of the numbers, you're correct. Your observation is very correct that we are clearly outnumbered, especially during last weekend in Ayungin. We need to put up a more decent numbers. From last weekend, we saw around 50 Chinese vessels participating in shadowing and blockade operations in the Ayungin Shoal. And as against our 5 to 6 vessels combined of the Philippine Navy and the Philippine Coast Guard. So we really need to modernize, we need to acquire more platforms so we can put up more decent numbers that will be, than what we have right now.
Admiral, itong maritime militia or Chinese maritime militia, kung tawagin, can you describe that to us? What exactly are they? Are they like parang, a long time ago, we had the CAFGU of the armed forces. Parang CAFGU ba yan?
Well, we still have the CAPGU. We call them CAAS, CAA staff. We still have them. They serve as our force multipliers on as far as our operations on the ground is concerned. Itong Chinese militia, they basically functions the same as our CAPGUs. They are also force multipliers of the Chinese Coast Guard and the PLA Navy. As you can see from the pictures, they look like fishing vessels, but they are not fishing vessels. They are not fishing. We have not observed them to be engaged in fishing activity while on the ground. They are
They're functioning
supporting
as,
the operations of the Chinese Coast Guard.
so they function like Chinese Coast Guard or Chinese Navy vessels.
From what we have seen on the ground, their behavior, they seem to be assisting the Chinese Coast Guard in their operations in the West Philippine Sea. Last weekend, during the RORE mission, they seem to be participating in the blockade operation. Tumutulong sila, and they are also maneuvering, also doing dangerous maneuvers against our vessels.
Admiral Carlos, itong water cannon, earlier I was speaking to you and you were saying that what's very obvious is that the water cannon incidents are limited to Ayungin and Scarborough, and this doesn't happen when it comes to the other islands. Can you explain why? This is because of the Sierra Madre, for example.
Yes, we have 9 features that we currently occupy in the West Philippine Sea. In Palawan, in our area of operation, it is only when we do our RORE missions in the other islands, we encounter occasional shadowing, but they're not very aggressive. They're not that aggressive compared to our RORE missions in Ayungin. The Chinese side's been saying that because we have a promise. We promised before that we will pull out the grounded Sierra Madre, and they're also saying that we agreed not to occupy any new features based on our agreement. But we always tell them that the agreement not to occupy new features in the West Philippine Sea was made in about 2002, and we occupied Ayungin in 1999. So that was before the agreement. And any promise to pull out Sierra Madre now, sinabi na yan ni Presidente that there's no agreement to that effect, and we will stay there. We will stay in Ayungin. We will not pull out our Sierra Madre there.
And as the President also added, and if there was an agreement, he was rescinding it. Admiral Carlos, I asked you this question earlier also. Kapag nagpaplano po kayo ng RORE mission, namomonitor po ba kayo ng China? Because every time na makarating ang the Coast Guard or BFAR in those target areas, nandoon na sila. Are they deployed because they monitor, or are they there? Are they always there for the long haul? And I mean, I guess they can afford to stay there for months on end, siguro, or for weeks, no?
Oh, napakarami ng Chinese vessel in the West Philippine Sea, and they remain there in hundreds. So, but in terms of our operations, we practice operational security when we plan for RORE. And we observe that hindi nila alam, they have no knowledge in advance that we are going to do the RORE. Kasi we are already out at sea. Then notice namin that they will react, and they will deploy their forces. Hindi naman nandun na sila in the usual number that they deploy for a RORE. We are already out at sea, tapos nakikita namin na nagre-react. So that means hindi nila alam na aalis kami, because the voyage takes about 30 hours. So we're out at sea for 30 hours, namomonitor na nila while we're already at sea.
Vice Admiral Carlos, itong a huge concern is there's been water cannon, laser, military-grade laser, even the sound, that use of the sound, no? And ang concern ngayon is this going to escalate, or hanggang dito na lang tayo at tulad ng sinabi ni Professor Calilong kanina, it's going to be the norm. Masasanay na lang tayo na ganito parate. So hindi tayo kailangan mag-worry na baka lumala ito.
Well, it's already escalating. Sabi mo nga, galing na yan sa laser, and then nandito na tayo sa water cannon. We expect more coercive actions from China, short of an arm attack. So ang next done after the water cannon is probably ramming, and also they will attempt to board our vessel, which is something that we will not allow them to do. So lahat yon short of an armed attack because they know that it will trigger our mutual defense treaty with the United States.
I'm glad you mentioned the attempt to board because that would be the height of, ang hirap sabihin, no? Pero, and like you said, we will not allow that to happen. Pero, the reality on the ground or out at sea is, for example, no, magkagit-gitan, and then as we saw in the last in over the weekend video, as in nagkagit-gitan at magkatabi talaga, ang dali-daling mag-board. Hindi po ba? Would they do that? Would they attempt to board? And if they do, what would the point be? Because I mean, if you board a ship, another ship, then you're trying to overpower the crew, right? But how can you do it if you're not armed? What are they going to do? Hand-to-hand combat? What?
Well, we will do. We prepared for everything. But like I said, I will not discuss operational details, but we will not let that happen. That's for sure. We will not let that happen. We will not let them board our vessel when we are doing legitimate operations in our exclusive economic zone.
But Admiral, when you say we, no, so you're talking for the Navy, for example, yung Coast Guard, hindi rin po sila papayag na ma-board ang kanilang mga sasakyang pandagat, hindi po ba? But if there is that attempt, what can the Coast Guard do? Or for example, the BFAR vessels, no, the crew of the BFAR vessels.
We have an evolution aboard ships, and I'm sure the Coast Guard meron din sila. We call it repel borders. We will repair. We practice that. It's a evolution at sea for all Navy vessel, Coast Guard vessels. Repel border. We will repair border.
Repel. Let me spell it for the viewers. Romeo Echo Papa Echo Lima, to repel borders, and there is
repel border.
There is a system for that. What is the likelihood, Vice Admiral? I don't know if that's a fair question to you know. What is the likelihood that that's going to happen? Because like we pointed out earlier and again, paulit-ulit na yung water cannon, yung laser, etc. They might be thinking of ways to harass Philippine vessels even more.
Well, this is a academic discussion that we're having kung ano pa yung pwedeng nilang gawin to escalate. And based on our assessment, short of an arm attack, ito nga yung pwede nilang gawin, ramming with an intent to sink or severely damage our vessel. Right now, it's all, hindi nga natin ginagamit yung ramming, it's all bumping. Bumping lang and gently colliding with each other but causing damages, but not intent to sink the other vessel. But if it's really ramming, meaning mabilis ka and mabilis ka na babanggain mo yung other ship, that's an intent to incur severe damage on the other side and possibly sink the vessel. So that is one. And we're also thinking of kung i-escalate pa, another action that can take is to board and search our vessel. So yun lang ang pataas. But whether it will happen or not, we don't know. But it's all, we consider it all short of an arm attack. That's why it's in our list of possible actions of the other side. We're brainstorming this, we're wargaming this, and we are prepared for any contingency that will happen on the ground.
Okay. And Admiral, I just wanted to ask, Admiral, na-promote na pala kita. Vice Admiral, pero Admiral na lang. But the the officials of the Philippine vessels, so Coast Guard, BFAR, or even the Navy, you would not do that. You would not attempt to board a Chinese vessel.
Well, as part of a maritime law enforcement, where we exercise jurisdiction over that particular area, if we see any violations of our maritime laws or violations of our sovereign rights, we have the right to board and search the vessel. Part of the our maritime law enforcement operation. Ginagawa talaga yan ng mga Navy, Coast Guard, and BFAR.
Okay, pero so tayo, kayo, ang Philippine Navy, Philippine Coast Guard, and BFAR, sumusunod po kayo sa batas, the law of the sea, pero ang tanong sumusunod po ba ang China? We're going to take a very quick and final break. When we return, Politics as Usual still continues. We're on the final stretch of Politics as Usual. Professor Kalilung, very quickly, I wanted you to comment on what Vice Admiral Carlos is saying. No, they've brainstormed, they've wargamed this possibility if, just in case, their vessels, the Navy or not Navy, Coast Guard, BFAR are boarded by Chinese maritime militia or Chinese Coast Guard. There is a system in place. There is a manual for that. They're prepared for that. But what do you think of that possibility? Is that even in, how likely is that na mangyari?
Well, I think, Pia, there is really a possibility, especially with what's happening right now in the West Philippine Sea. I mean, I think what China is really doing here is they're really trying to test up to where our ships, our crew members, particularly our Coast Guard, will be able to take their bullying tactics. And if push comes to shove, ika nga, no, I think we will be we might be seeing things like that to actually happen and to actually take its course. And I think there is already a pattern, no, that we're seeing right now. But then again, I think our Coast Guard and our officials are actually well entrenched to the idea of how to deal with it. I think there are already rules of engagements on how it could be carried out. But I think it's not really a remote possibility, because what China is actually doing right now, and I would like to comment that it is not something that is directly headed towards us as a country, as a sovereign nation, but I think it's more of a provocation thing that China is doing, especially now that we actually have a renewed kind of relationship built on trust and confidence with the United States. And we have to understand that it's all about not just the West Philippine Sea, but also about Taiwan and the Taiwan Strait.
Right,
And
right.
2049 is fast approaching. And why do I say 2049? That will be the 100 years since the communist takeover of mainland China. And remember, the nationalist China, the nationalist bastion of China, was transferred to Taiwan. And I think President Xi Jinping is really bent on taking back Taiwan. And what's happening right now, especially with our renewed relationship with the United States, and that there are additional EDCA sites,
Okay.
the tyranny of distance, insofar as China is concerned, is
Yes.
actually being minimized by that. And
Okay.
so I think this is what China is trying to test, not just our patience, but I think how well the United States could actually keep their guards before they actually come into the fray and try to help us.
Yes.
But of course, this will not happen. This will
Okay.
not happen unless there will be a provoked and armed altercation that should take place first.
Okay, well, it's very good to hear from you on that, so that we can view all these West Philippine Sea incidents through that lens. Very important to remember all the geopolitics that goes into this, and it's not just limited to the WPS. But my final question na lang to Vice Admiral Carlos. Vice Admiral, the Armed Forces has never had a Navy officer as its Chief of Staff. We did have Pong Biazon, pero Marines po siya. But my question is, do you think it's high time that we have a Navy man as a CS, given that we are an archipelagic nation and the threats or challenges to Philippine sovereignty are centered on the sea?
I will leave that to our commander-in-chief.
Yeah.
I will leave that. I will, whatever the decision of the commander-in-chief, we will follow.
Okay. But of course, this is still a challenge that until you retire in December 2024, that you're going to be dealing with. And like Professor Colillo was saying, no, talaga masasanay na lang tayo na ganito na lang. Tama ba, Vice Admiral Carlos?
Well, there will be changes on the ground, but the realities on the ground are not changing very, very slow naman yung pag-change. It will not be instantaneous, but we expect some changes to happen in the near future. Better, for the better, and pabor naman sa atin. Pabor naman sa atin, hopefully.
A one-sentence clue as to those changes.
What's that?
A clue as to
sentence?
those changes.
Well, changes in the behavior of the Chinese, better conditions sa Pilipinas. There are a lot of targets or changes on the ground that we are hoping to see, like the number of militia vessels, less aggressive, those things. We expect to see some changes once we have this new strategy implemented on the ground.
All right, Professor Froilan Calilung and Vice Admiral Alberto Carlos, the chief of the AFP Western Command that has jurisdiction over Palawan and the West Philippine Sea. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, gentlemen. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk warfare, digital or otherwise, but we can talk about it here at this table on this show, your weekly political appointment fix, Politics as Usual. I'm Pia Hontiveros. You're back here next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Sports Desk with Andre Felix is next.